Welcome back to the channel. And yeah, today I'm gonna be sharing tips on lighting and shadows, and hopefully you learn something from how I animate my shadows and add little bits of styles to my characters and make them pop when animating. And yeah, I hope you like it. I hope you enjoy, and please do leave a comment below if you found it useful or if you have any other concepts or ideas on ways to do it. And I am still waiting for a shout out from the official Moho channel. And I've seen other animators getting a shout out from them, but I'm still waiting for my shout out. But anyway, let's get into it. So I have shadows, and this will be shadow outside. This is like the first style that I'm gonna share with you, which is the shadow. It's basically I duplicated my main rig. So this is my main rig, and I duplicated the same one. You can use it as a reference layer also, or just duplicate it after you've done the animation or whatever, and you can just duplicate it and use this rotate layer XY and change its position, and it will look like this. It will look like this. So how do you get it to look like that? Solid black with opacity. So what you do is you click on it and you colorize the layer, and you can make it black. So if your shadow is any other different color you want to use, you can adjust it to any other color you want. And let's say green, and we can say okay, apply, and it should change to green immediately. That's the green color. And you can adjust the visibility, opacity from 80 to 30 to whatever you feel like. Apply, file, preview, and as you can see, it adjusts as you wish. Colorize layer, bring it back to black. You can also adjust the opacity here and press OK, apply, OK, preview, and there we have it, our shadow. And others normally use the shadows inbuilt, but I found they slow down my computer when I'm using these shadows, and they're really hard to actually get perfectly because you don't get a preview as you're adjusting them. So for me, this just works quicker, just to duplicate the animation and make it a colorized layer, and you can have a solid shadow. And that is the shadow outside. And then my option 2 is shadow on the inside, which is the shade. Let's just zoom back into there. And how we achieve this is we've got our rig, and then we go to the layer you want to apply the shadow to, and that is my face layer, which I want to apply shadow to. And you click on it, and on effect 1 you can adjust the shadow positions, and you can see them. There's a preview there. You can adjust it, you can adjust the size and experiment on the side, experiment on the blur, and you can adjust it as you wish to get the perfect shadow you want. And you adjust where it's coming from, night and day, time of day, and so on. You can have really cool effects on the shadow and create some interesting depth. And that is pretty much simple on that one. And that is the shade. You can also do it on the stroke. You can affect the stroke by effect 2, and you can affect the stroke using the effect here, shaded, and affect the stroke, and also adjust the stroke, but we won't be working on that for now. So that is the quick and simple shade inside. And then also face light, you can do it for lighting if you want to put shadows. So we've done shadows, and now you can do the opposite for lighting, and it's basically the same. We go to the face layer, we click on it, and it's shaded. What I just did is I adjusted the color of the shade. So I'm using the same effect we used for shading, but we are just adjusting the color, and you can have nice effects. Let's say your character is in a nightclub and it needs to dance in lights or strobe lights. You can have it adjusting like that in the shade. I believe in the timeline it should be able to adjust. Let's just test that out. I actually haven't tested it out on the timeline. Let's see if it's possible to adjust on the timeline. Yes, it is possible to adjust on the timeline and adjust. So that is also an interesting way to adjust colors or change colors from happy to sad, angry, moods, using that shade ability. And you can adjust the blur and all that stuff. Same, it works like that, but for now we're just using it for lighting, and we light up a character that way and move on to rim light. And basically the same thing, but for the rim light, what I do is I go to the face layer and I switch off the stroke on some of the sides that I do not want to adjust. So we have switched off using the stroke exposure, the hide edge, and we just hide the edges. And also stroke exposure works for if you want to move a circle that you want to show light going away or hiding behind, and you can use stroke exposure for that and adjust the size of the rim light and so forth. You can adjust it like that. You can change color the same way we did on the stroke. We change color here, and we can adjust it to any color we want. And that is the rim light. And that is an option to do rim light. And then there's also another option to colorize, and we can colorize the layer we duplicate or reference layer, the rig, and then we just go into the rim light and we colorize it, and it is a solid black, and you can just then move it solid color, whatever color, you can just move it behind the character as a rim light where it is, where it needs to be. You just adjust it and you get a really cool effect. If we preview it, this is the effect you get. You can get a nice rim light when you're doing whatever characters or situations your character's in. You can have a nice rim light there, and once you have the rim light, you can then add a shadow on the other side. You can combine the other options and really create some depth in your scene. And then my favorite is when you already draw in the shadow and light. So it's basically a layer, and then I've got my strokes that are colored in shadow and also in color, and you can adjust the opacity of them, and it works perfectly. You can adjust them by size, strength, you can adjust the strokes. And the nice thing about strokes, they can go as big as you want them to and as small as you want them to. You do not have to draw a full shape and have to adjust many points as you're moving around the character in your rig as it turns. Let's say you want to move the head turn, you can adjust with it. When you put in your rig, in your main rig, you can rig it and move the lines with or without. After, you can move it in the timeline if you need to move them. You can then go into the shadow light layer and move them about if you need to do that. But mostly I like to rig them on to the rig as the head turn and rig them on in an action. I like to already put them in an action, and then shadow and light layer, and adjust to the action you need. And of course you can change the color, so the light can become the shadow can become the light, and you can adjust like that. And that is your rig character in your action. Go back to the main line, and it should move with as you wish. It should be able to move with, you know, but we are running through it. It's not really working, but it should work if we do it properly. And we'll start again from scratch if we need to. Okay, and then the last one is frame by frame, which I feel you can use instead of having to move the points. If you don't rig them, you can use the frame by frame. So what I did is I made a layer, group layer, and I put in my rig. This is my rig layer, and then in that rig layer I have my rig. This is my rig, as you can see, on and off. And then in there I have a frame by frame layer, which can be found here, frame by frame layer, on this icon with the plus sign, new layer, frame by frame, and you add it, and then from there you can just add new frame, delete frame, or duplicate. So I have one frame, I draw on the first frame my shadow. So let's say we want to put in light, we can simply draw light. We can use this, we can even draw it. So let's say we want to draw the light, we just draw in the light there. We want it to be colored white, and then all we have to simply do is duplicate it as we go into the layers. We duplicate and we still have the same layer. As it moves, we can adjust it in a frame by frame motion, like I already did in a frame by frame motion. So this one, we duplicated it, we duplicate again. You can continue duplicating frame by frame after frame, or you can draw it frame by frame traditionally like we do with your pencil tool. And in my previous video I actually show you how to do traditional frame by frame animation. So basically those are the tips and tricks of how to add lighting and shading in your characters or in your scenes using Moho, and many ways to do it. And hope you find one that is useful to you, and show me your stuff, send your links in the comments below, and hope to see you on the next video, and cheers.